Welcome friend to this session of command patterns. In this session we will try to understand what is the fundamental of command patterns, definition of it, and we will also try to go through a simple sample code and try to understand that how we can implement the same in actual projects. So let's first understand the fundamentals. They belong to behavioral categories of command of design patterns. Means what? uh, Behavioral categories or design patterns are those categories, or are those design patterns which helps us to change the behavior of a project without altering the main structure of your current project. So all the design patterns which falls into behavioral categories will help you to change the behavior of a project and uh, preserving the original architecture of the project. Command pattern allows a request or action to exist as a class and object. So basically, let's say that you are doing a control X and a control Y. So it will save that control X action into a class or into an object, which you can later retrieve and do operations on that. So when will you use command patterns is basically when you want to maintain your request as classes and objects. And with maintaining requests as classes and objects, there is a complete cleanliness in the code which is maintained. Here's an actual example of it. Let's say that we have a menu with file, open, print, exit. So file, open, print, exits are basically actions, or we can say they are basically requests. Now if you look at a normal way we will code this actions is that probably we can just have a if condition saying that if the str action is a file, then do something. If it's open, then do something. What happens with this is that we have a lot of if conditions in the project, and tomorrow if you want to add a new action, then basically again we add a new if condition. So uh, the basic point here is that any change in or any addition of new actions into the UI uh, also uh, also has to be replicated in the if conditions. So here's a clean way of approach to that. What we do is that we basically start housing these commands into simple classes. Okay, so for example, print we house into a print class, a file we house into a file. Okay, the only thing which we have to do is that we need to ensure that we implement them from a common interface. Okay, second, what we have done is that in order to identify this class or this object, we have kept some strings like exit, or we can say these are keys by which we can pull up these objects: open, file, and print. And then these classes have their own way of implementing these actions. For example, probably I've just displayed here what these actions do, but here in this what you call in this section you can put your custom action for every command. Now we also need to have an invoker method which actually will have the collection of these commands. So what I've done is I've created a simple CLS invoker class. This invoker class will help us, depending on what the action is, to help us to get that action object so that we can execute it. So what I've done is that I've just added all the actions into one array list, and then I have a get command method which I've kept in my invoker, which will help me to get the actual object which has get the actual object depending on the command what we need. Now if I look at my client code, it's very simple. You just create an object of the invoker class first. Second, depending on the action, get the object and execute it. So now you can see that there is no if conditions over here. It's simple 3 lines of code. Create an invoker object, pass in the command action, and then execute it. Let's make a simple code walkthrough of it. So what we'll do is that we'll basically just look into the code. It's very simple. It's the same thing what I've discussed. I have a simple I execute interface, and this I execute interface basically is implemented in all my actions. For example, file, exit, open, and print. And then I have my menu over here. If you look at my menu, like if I say what I've done is if you look at my menu where the actions are, there is nothing in that. What I've done is that I just told that please pass me what action it is, get the object from the invoker and execute it. So there is no if condition. Tomorrow if I want to add one more class, I can just go and add one more class implementing it and put the appropriate string there. So with this what happens is basically you have housed your commands into objects. One of the practical implementation of command patterns is your control Z and control Y, like where you have a undo and a redo. So what you can probably see that in any of the famous editors like Word or PowerPoint or probably Excel, where you do a control X and you do a control Y. What it does is that it saves this whole command with the data inside a object, and when you do a redo or undo, right, it just reverts back to the old actions. So basically what's happening is that you save actions with data. So when will you use this command pattern? You will use command patterns, when you think that you want to store actions and data together and do some kind of redo and undo operations. For example, if you're making a game project where you would like to see that, because in games normally the actions play a more important role. So what you would like to see is probably somebody shoots here or he walks, right? So these are actions which you can just command into where you can just house them into objects, and then use them, reuse them again and again. So ask yourself a question that, do I need to store commands and its objects and its state? Or I can say, do I need to maintain states of objects as commands? Then definitely use this pattern. Or if you see that your actions are very complicated, okay, and these actions can be housed into common can be housed from a common interface, then you can house these actions into objects and reuse them again and again. I hope that we were able to clear your fundamentals about command patterns.